What's up, y'all? Welcome back. In this video, we're going to go over exactly why the United States government invaded Venezuela. Me personally, I woke up to the news that the government went in, attacked on their territory, and had taken their president, their sitting president, and his wife back to the United States.
As part of a major President Trump says the U.S. captured Venezuelan leader Nicolas Maduro as part of a major military operation overnight that rocked the country's capital, Caracas. NPR's Greg Myrie reports on Trump's announcement early this morning saying Maduro has been taken out of the country.
The U.S. And this is without Congress approval or insight. So this is very important on the global scale of things, because we don't know the precedent this is going to set. But I wanted to go through the history of why this is important and all the other players that may be involved. Now, I went down the rabbit hole and I found out a lot of information, and I just want to relay it to you because I feel like there's a lot of people talking, but there's not that many people that are actually putting all the pieces together. So I took some notes, and because I'm not the best speaker and I'm trying to get better, just bear with me with the notes as I kind of read some of these headlines. And I'm going to show you along the way. I'm going to show you some videos, I'm going to show you some pictures, and I'm going to show you exactly where I'm getting some of this information from, as well as I will put the sources from the websites of the websites that I got this information from. But just starting off with what happened the night of the invasion. U.S. forces conducted a nighttime operation in Venezuela. Operation occurred 36 years to the day after the 1990 U.S. invasion of Panama.
The U.S. launched the operation in the middle of the night, with explosions ringing out in the capital Caracas and helicopters crisscrossing the sky. A couple hours later, President Trump took to Truth Social and wrote, quote, "The United States has successfully carried out a large-scale strike against Venezuela and its leader, President Nicolas Maduro, who has been, along with his wife, captured and flown out of the country."
Trump said the U.S. shut down almost all the lights in Caracas during the operation, and Nicolas Maduro and his wife were seized overnight from their home on a military base. They were taken into a U.S. warship. Maduro was flown to the United States to face Justice Department charges. Charges accuse Maduro of participating in a narco-terrorism conspiracy. That's important because the propaganda machine here in the United States has told us that it's because he brings drugs in, that he was actually putting his prisoners here, he was putting people in mental institutions here.
You've said that Nicolas Maduro's days are numbered and that the U.S. could soon strike Venezuelan territory. Could we see American troops on the ground in Venezuela?
I don't comment on that. I wouldn't say that one way or the other. I can say this, that he sent us millions of people, many from prisons, many drug dealers and drug lords, and mental institution, people in mental institutions. He sent them into our country where we had a very stupid president. You know that. Biden's a low IQ person.
But also there's this undertone that has something to do with oil. And we'll come back to that later as far as Venezuelan oil goes. However, there's a little bit more history when it comes to Venezuela and oil and the other bigger players that are on the board globally. And I just want to make some of those connections and connect some of those dots for you. If you already, some of you might already know, but myself, I'm not a historian. So when I find information like this, I find it fascinating. And this story really starts back in 1953, when the U.S. and the UK helped overthrow Iran's prime minister after he naturalizes oil. He was a Western-friendly Shah, and he was restored to power with the support of the U.S. And this had a lot to do with oil, because in 1954, the U.S., British, and French companies gained 40% ownership of Iran's oil industry. Iran's oil became tied to U.S. economic interests. Also, I did not know, but in 1957, U.S. helps Iran develop nuclear technology under the Atoms for Peace. The U.S. provides a reactor and weapons-grade enriched uranium. Cooperation continues until Iran's revolution. This revolution happened in 1979, where the Shah, who had cancer and was being treated in the United States, had been overthrown while he was gone by an anti-Western theocracy, and Iran vows to export its revolution. And this is how you had that influence back into Syria, into other areas like Iraq and Palestine. Hezbollah later forms and aligns with Iran. At the end of the day, the United States backed Iran at that time, back then, and they were allies. And you can kind of see similar themes happening around the world. The Shah at the time was put in place by the U.S. government. And so when things stopped working out, they were no longer allies. So how does that play a part with Venezuela? Well, in 2022, June 11, Iran and Venezuela signed a 20-year cooperation agreement, which included energy, defense, agriculture, engineering, tourism, and culture. And this collaboration was for the direct counter U.S. sanctions and resist U.S. pressure and push back against U.S. imperialism. That's kind of what we're seeing today. Also, Iran delivers oil tankers to Venezuela, helps repair Venezuela's oil refineries. And the goal was to keep Venezuela's functioning under sanctions. Iran, Venezuela, Iraq, Kuwait, and Saudi Arabia helped form OPEC, which is the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries. OPEC was created to challenge Western control over oil, and by the 1970s, OPEC gained massive economic leverage over Western nations. Oil becomes central to power, sanctions, alliances, and regime survival. So every time oil shows up, there seems to be some type of power struggle and conflict. Now, I'm going to put another little piece in there because it involves another player yet to be named, but I have a feeling because of the proximity of everything that's going on, this new player has a lot to do with what's going on now. There has been this ongoing conflict between Israel and Iran. And at one point there was a Israeli-Arab war, but that was a long time ago. But in more recent years, from 2010 to 2024, dozens of alleged Israeli operations against Iran happened, targeted assassinations, drone strikes, and cyber attacks. And many of those attacks were nuclear related to Iran's nuclear program. So there's always been that conflict there between Israel and Iran, and there's been a tie that goes all the way back to the 1960s between Iran and Venezuela. You know, now we're starting to see the bigger picture here, where these players are playing on a global level, and the United States kind of seems like a bully, but then you realize that there's a more strategic plan happening in the background. I'm going to show you a picture. This is the picture of Palestine and Israel back when it was being formed. The British mandate over Palestine after World War I, where Jewish immigration increases sharply in the 1930s, Tensions escalate between Jewish and Arab populations. In 1947, UN proposes partition, and in 1948, Israel established, and multiple wars follow from 1948 to present day. I just thought that was interesting because Iran is also backing Palestine, and there's been plenty of attacks back and forth between Iran and Israel, and the Gaza Strip is right there in the middle. What about the future of Venezuela? What does that mean? Donald Trump has already suggested that the United States is going to run it.
We can do a safe, proper, and judicious transition. So we don't want to be involved with having somebody else get in, and we have the same situation that we had for the last long period of years. So we are going to run the country until such time as we can do a safe, proper, and judicious transition. And it has to be judicious because that's what we're all about. We want peace, liberty, and justice for the great people of Venezuela, and that includes many from Venezuela that are now living in the United States and want to go back to their country. It's their homeland. We can't take a chance that somebody else takes over Venezuela that doesn't have the good of the Venezuelan people in mind. We've had decades of that. We're not going to let that happen. We're there now, and what people don't understand, but they understand as I say this, we're there now, but we're going to stay until such time as the proper transition can take place. So we're going to stay until such time as we're going to run it, essentially, until such time as a proper transition can take place.
And there's already a couple people that are part of the opposition to Maduro, and it's going to be a mystery to see exactly how this is going to play out.
But what am I going to say? How important it is for the Venezuelan people. This is a recognition to a nation that has fought tirelessly, courageously against a criminal narco-terrorist structure. And I came to receive that prize, that award, and I'm going to bring it back home to the Venezuelan people as soon as possible.
You say you're going back home. I know you sent your own children out of Venezuelan territory in order to protect them, your sons, your daughter. Are they concerned that you plan to return to Venezuela? When are you going?
Well, of course, they are concerned as any other Venezuelan child that has their parents or relatives back in our country, because the regime, as I said, has persecuted, tortured, killed, disappeared thousands of Venezuelans, and recently it has turned even more violent because, you know, when a criminal regime is falling apart and they know their days are numbered, they turn even more aggressive, even more violent.
Can you help us understand what is going on? Because we are seeing here in the U.S. an increase in the pressure campaign, more sanctions on Venezuelan individuals and vessels. We saw an armed seizure of a vessel carrying oil out of Venezuela. Selling oil on the black market is really important money for the Maduro regime. Do you endorse this idea of more seizures and possibly even a blockade?
Look, I absolutely support President Trump's strategy, and we, the Venezuelan people, are very grateful to him and to his administration, because I believe he is a champion of freedom in this hemisphere. And that's why, and I say this from Oslo right now, I had dedicated this award to him, because I think that he finally has put Venezuela in where it should be in terms of a priority for the United States national security. And we do support these actions because, Margaret, we are facing not a conventional dictatorship. This is a very complex criminal structure that has turned Venezuela into a safe haven of international crime and terrorist activities.
Even in a disastrous economic crisis, thousands of Venezuelans still turn out every week to support President Nicolas Maduro. But that support is less about Maduro himself than it is about loyalty to the man who was president before him, Hugo Chavez. Chavez became a national hero by lifting millions out of poverty. And before he died in 2013, he named Maduro as his successor alternative.
Si hay mucha gente que está dejando de apoyar este gobierno, ¿no? Aunque no seas tú.
Aunque no sea yo, pero sí hay personas que están decepcionadas por X o Y, pero sí hay decepciones. Están decepcionados, más no son de la oposición. ¿Ves? Están pasivos.
¿Por qué estar decepcionado con el gobierno y con el chavismo no quiere decir, no es lo mismo que estar con la oposición?
No sé, pero es que, ¿qué te va a ofrecer la oposición? Sí, ¿cuánto tiempo tiene la oposición peleando por X cosa o Y? ¿Pero qué ha hecho?
Confianza en lo que somos, guerreros, libertadores, valientes, venezolanos, en definitiva, dignos.
The new face of the opposition is Juan Guaidó, the 35-year-old president of the National Assembly. In January, with support from the U.S., he declared himself the legitimate president of Venezuela.
El régimen sabe que está derrotado. El régimen sabe que ellos no son ningún camino a nada. Nosotros sabemos que la solución pasa por nosotros.
We sat down with Guaidó for an exclusive interview and asked him what he has to offer after 12 weeks of claiming power without actually having it.
Por ahora, Maduro se ha aferrado al poder. A mí, por lo menos, no me parece que hay una nueva estrategia clara por parte de la oposición. ¿Cómo ve usted el futuro? ¿Cómo ve el camino?
¿Cuál debe ser la ruta? Insistir. O sea, podría sonar trillado, pero la verdad la ruta cuando enfrentamos a una dictadura con la no violencia, con la Constitución, con la movilización, nuestra gran defensa, nuestra gran posibilidad de avance es continuar.
Pero entonces no va a haber cambio de estrategia. Digo, porque la situación ahora es como extraña, ¿no? Hay gobiernos paralelos. Obviamente muchos países lo reconocen a usted como el presidente, pero todavía no está ejerciendo el poder. ¿Cuánto más puede durar esa situación?
Bueno, es una situación realmente atípica. Entonces, aquí la gran pregunta es, ¿cuánto más costoso en tiempo, en vidas humanas, lo va a hacer Nicolas Maduro Moro?
¿Usted no teme que la gente, incluso la gente que lo apoya a usted, o por lo menos la gente que rechaza a Nicolás Maduro, va a perder la paciencia?
Ya la perdieron. No sé si viste las protestas recientes en Venezuela. Ya la paciencia aquí se perdió.
No, pero la paciencia con usted.
Bueno, la paciencia en general.
We would have taken it over, we would have gotten all that oil, it would have been right next door. But now we're buying oil from Venezuela, so we're making a dictator very rich. Can you believe this? Nobody can believe it. You know where the oil, their oil is garbage, it's horrible, the worst you can get. Tar, it's like tar. And to refine it, you need special plants. And these people, how about we're buying oil from Venezuela? When I left, Venezuela was ready to collapse. We would have taken it over. We would have gotten all that oil. It would have been right next door. But now we're buying oil from Venezuela, so we're making a dictator very rich. Can you believe this? Nobody can believe it. You know where the oil, their